Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com.
Hello, this is Scott Michael Childers. Our usual host, Jason Bougger, is out right now. He's lost his voice, which would make recording an audio podcast something of an exercise in futility. Today, I'm going to talk really briefly about a topic that I don't know if people think about too much, but the idea of writers' tools, the things that can help and sometimes hinder a writer's ability to do what they want to do. One of the first things that people may want to think about is their choice of writing medium. There are some writers that prefer to do everything longhand on pad of paper, pencil, pen, what have you. And the act of writing it out longhand is something that stimulates their creative parts of their brain. That's cool. I mean, if you want to do it that way, if that's what works best for you, great. Then there are others that use some sort of keyboard combination, whether it's an old style typewriter, a word processor, or a piece of software on their PC. There's lots of software out there for writers. One that I use a lot is Scrivener, but there's others out there that are designed to do one of two things. Some of them are designed just for, hey, this is a blank screen right here. Some of them put in time limits, so that way you can't get to anything else on your computer while you are writing. It helps prevent that, while I'm here, I'm going to look at this or that. Then there are other products for writers that hold all of the notes or snippets for your current project within one file. So that way it's easy, when it comes time to write, you come to your computer, open up software, open up the project file, all your character notes, your plot points, the scraps are in there. Some let you easily move bits and pieces around, chapters and such, timelines. So there's lots of tools out there for that actual writing process. One thing I want to say is do what works best for you. Try a few things out. I've seen on some writers' message boards, people constantly ask, what should I use for writing? What should I use? And like I'm doing now, I can share my experience, but the creative process works differently in different people. For some, they're more of that physical act of writing longhand on a piece of paper triggers the creative processes, or allows their brain to, that pace that you take with that style of writing creates a different type of flow. It creates a different voice for your work. And for some, that's the type of work they want to create. Then there's others that like the efficiency of having everything in one place and being able to do research or tap things out that way. Great. There was a thread on a writing message board I was following. He writes on a phone, and it's not because he's doing it during the commute. It's just that's what works best for that particular writer. And it's like, well, should I feel bad about it because they're using a phone, a smartphone? It's like you're writing and it's working. So don't give it a second thought. And to be honest, I think we're going to see more writers using that form factor because that's the majority of use, right? So whatever works best for that actual writing process for you. And there's going to be jerks out there that says you need to be doing this or you need to be doing that. Don't listen to them. So do whatever the process is that works. Now, that said, if you are submitting to a publisher or something, they're going to want computer files in a certain format. So keep that in mind that, especially if you're doing longhand, you're going to have a time cost in putting that into a computer file. So, typewriter, there's going to be some of that transition. However, some people work that in. As they are typing that, they do the first draft in paper, and then as they're typing it into that word processor file, that's when they're doing that first revision draft, and they're catching things as they're typing it in. So again, what's your process? Where does your creativity come in, and then where does the more editorial voice come from when you're doing your revisions? For me, I'm the opposite. I'll do my first draft in, a word processor, and I'll often print out at least the first or maybe even second draft into paper and do my editing with red pen circling and proofreading marks that way. Just for me, that's the way I edit. So your tools, what you prefer is important. I wouldn't say there's an industry standard that everyone uses X, especially during the first draft. Like I said, publishers are going to want stuff in certain formats, so make sure your work process gives you the ability to do that. Some other tools that come in handy for writers, of course, thesaurus, or at least knowing what that is. You can always use the internet. Of course, there's plenty of online tools. If you're more of a book style person, they're still putting them out. Also, if you're doing something with a more historical bent, research texts are going to be useful. Something a little bit more meaty than Wikipedia if you're doing any type of historical fiction. So your research notes. This is one of the reasons why I tend to use Scrivener is I can get all my research notes and associate them with the project, and those various other programs let you do something similar. If it's also great for world building, if you want to have some sort of document for your world building. I've heard of some authors that are doing really extensive world building, like they're working on a trilogy or epic fantasy. They'll create a small wiki on their desktop, and they'll just create this small Wikipedia for that world. It includes character notes, it includes locations. Others will draw out maps of buildings or of cities. Have those reference tools for the internal consistency that will make your story better. And you can find there's some mapping tools online, things like that. Some other tools that are useful, I'm going to just pitch your local library, not just for the reference stuff, but in many cases, they can provide you a third place, a place to get away, plug in your laptop, grab your pen and paper, and just write in a quiet nook somewhere. Now, that said, don't go to the library expecting quiet in those hours right after school or during summer reading programs because the kids are going to be loud. But there are other times of the day where it's going to be very quiet and you can write. And there are some people where this is great because there's still people milling about. So there's still this energy of humanity, but it's still relatively quiet so you can concentrate. And if you go during other times of the day, they're going to be possibly empty depending on your location. Then, of course, there's coffee shops or other places where you can spend some time. And the reason I'm suggesting third place, and this is if you want to do some research on third place, it's an interesting concept. But you have home, and you have all the duties of being at home, right? The dishes, the vacuum cleaning, kids, pets, partners, what have you. And the distractions of home, right? All of your hobbies, television, music, video games, what have you. Then you have work. Well, if you're at work, you should probably be working. And then even if you're not working, but if you're still on the grounds, sometimes that distracts you, or you become a target. I know in some places where I've been, if I was in the break room, even though I was off duty, I would still be asked about work stuff, so I had to get away from there. So a third place is another place where you can go. And that's why I'm suggesting find that for you if you can't whittle out a place at home for yourself that no one else is going to bother you when that door is closed. So I know for Jason, he had a space, but as his family grew, he lost that, and so now he's looked for other places. And perhaps we'll spend some time with him later on after he gets his voice back to talk about those type of things. So other tools at your disposal. This isn't so much as a tool, but resource. And that's something if you're really going to get into writing for publishing, you may want to talk about, and we'll talk about more at length about these topics, beta readers, people who will read your work before you get really serious in your submission process. They are helping polish that work by providing feedback to you. And again, we'll talk more about beta readers later. If you're doing something that's more self-publishing oriented, getting good editors is going to be a resource that you will need. And also, there's various other books and podcasts and stuff to learn about writing. We've mentioned Stephen King's book. Oftentimes, there's the Elements of Style by Strunk, which helps with the grammar. We get various other podcasts, author blogs, where they talk about the craft, talk about the business. That said, you can listen to all the podcasts you want and read all the books you want, but until you actually get in there and start working with stuff, you really won't know how good of a writer you could be. And let me tell you, you won't know that until after you've got a lot of writing done. You need to get in there and do that, and you'll face hurdles and stuff like that. But gather your toolkit, get your resources, get your support network together, and go out there and just keep writing. So that said, hopefully when Jason gets his voice back, we'll do another set of recordings. We've got some more tropes that we want to explore with you. We've taken a 2-episode detour at this point. Maybe there's a trope about detours. But we'll get back to that, hopefully, in our next podcast. If you enjoy or have learned something from our series, please feel free to support us at www.patreon.com/writegoodbooks. And look for us in social media. So until next time, we'll see you.